This is NHL Wraparound Quick Takes. This is spring cleaning for the Washington Capitals. The Washington Capitals were eliminated from playoff competition on April the 13th. Neil, when I went back and I listened to our summer coolers at what the expectations for this team after winning the Eastern Conference during the course of the regular season in 2024-25, we expected them to take a step back. They were 32 games above 500 on the morning of March 23rd, 2025, but they finished 4-7-1, and I think a lot of this had to do with the Ovi chase, even though they did hold on to win the conference. They beat Montreal in 5 games, but in round 2 against Carolina, they looked 2 steps behind, and I think that almost gave us a sign of what we might see coming up this year. And of course, also, they had 8 players with career years in 24-25, and it's very difficult to think that that was going to repeat itself.
Absolutely, and I thought I saw by the time Ovi scored that goal that the focus of the season was really turned to his chasing that record rather than getting the President's Trophy. And they seemed to slip from there. And then when they got to the playoffs, they never seemed to regain the style that they had early in the season. You're right. They were a couple of steps behind Carolina and being eliminated by them. And as you looked at this team and what they did over the summer, it didn't appear that they were going to be anywhere close to where they were last year.
As you just mentioned, one of the things that we also looked at was their offseason activity, which was relatively quiet. And so when you lump all of this together, it delivered this sort of reality. Even though the team went 8-2-0 in their last 10 games, for the first 72 games of the season, they were only pacing for 90 points in a division that the cutoff bar for a long time was in that 96, 97, 98 range. And those players that had career years last year, here's some of the drop-offs. Dylan Strome, 29 goals, 53 assists, 82 points in 2024-25, drops to 19, 39, and 58. Alexi Protas, 30 goals and 66 points, drops to 25 goals and 52 points. Connor McMichael, 26 goals, 31 assists, 57 points, 24-25, only 14 goals, 32 assists, and 46 points. So you think you get the odd goal here and there, you win another 2 or 3 games, and you're talking playoffs. We're not even talking about them at this point of the spring. But, and I know you may need to be resuscitated for this, the big one here, the injury to Pierre-Luc Dubois, which limited him to only 29 games after playing every game in 24-25 in a season in which he had career highs with 46 assists and 66 points.
And he was a big part of that team a year ago for the Capitals, and this season, as you said, was limited to 29 games. That takes a big piece out of the puzzle for the Caps.
Players that kind of held their own this year, Tom Wilson, Jacob Chychrun, and Logan Thompson in goal. And I think we also saw some bumps from Ryan Leonard, finished with 20 goals, 45 points, and Justin Sortov, who was acquired in a trade from Florida, who had 15 goals and 35 points. And I think Ilya Protas, Alexi's brother, who we saw late in the regular season, should be a regular in 26-27. But another area that the team dropped in was their special teams. The power play dropped from 14th to 25th, and the penalty killing fell from 4th to 15th. So these may not seem like enormous drops in the big picture of things, but when you take into account how close NHL games are, every little thing matters. And this season, Spencer Carberry and his troops just fell short.
Yeah, they sure did, and they're not a young team, and they weren't a young team a year ago, but they were all pulling in the same direction a year ago, and ended up, as you said, with career years for a lot of these players, and ended up almost winning the President's Trophy. Winnipeg ended up winning it, but it was just not to be this year, and now they enter the summer with the prospect of maybe not having Ovechkin next season. He still hasn't made his decision whether to come back or not.
Here's the work ahead for GM Chris Patrick. The Caps have only 5 picks in the 2026 draft. They have 2 in the first round, their own and the one that they got from Anaheim in the John Carlson deal, but they have none in the second. That pick was traded to Florida in the Sordiff deal, and they have none in the third. They traded that to Ottawa in the Jacob Chychrun deal in 2024, and they also have none in the 6th round. That pick traded to Vancouver in return for forward David Kampf. They have $4.4 million in projected cap space. They're UFAs, as you've noted. Alex Ovechkin, also forwards Brandon Duhaime and the aforementioned Kampf. And on defense, Trevor Van Riemsdyk and Timothy Liljegren. And their RFAs, Connor McMichael and Hendrix Lapierre. So when I look at this from the macro, it doesn't look like there's a lot of good room here for Patrick to maneuver.
No, there isn't a lot of room to maneuver around with this team. And as I said, they're not a young team, except for guys like Ryan Leonard, who had a real good year last year. They're going to have to do some maneuvering. And I think between Patrick and the ownership and people that are above him, they're going to have to decide what direction to go in once OV tells him whether he wants to come back. Obviously, if he's coming back, you're not going to tear it down while he's there. But if he decides he's retiring, you might have to tear it down like some teams have done to try to build it back up again.
But if that happens, and clearly there is a fork in the road here, that the story has yet to be written, but I don't see this team having to tear it down to the nubs. I mean, this would be more of a retool as opposed to a rebuild, and I know that we get caught up in the semantics of this, but there are still some good components here that I don't think you bring this down to the girders.
No, I don't either, but I guess what we're trying to say by retool, rebuild, whatever, taking it on the chin for a couple of years so that you get some high picks, so that you get some youth injected into the lineup and some future, and that's what they may have to work on. But if OV comes back, they probably will try to do one more good year and see if they can do it.
Could you see Patrick maybe taking an approach similar to the one that the Penguins took this year, where they got a bunch of parts? It all worked out for Pittsburgh, at least during the course of the regular season, and gave Crosby and Malkin and Letang another shot at the playoffs?
Yeah, I could see that. I could see them doing that. I think that that's what they will do. But again, it all depends on, what Alex Ovechkin's going to do. And then from there, what ownership wants you to do when you're in management.